The GPS voice was the only sound in the suffocating silence of the sedan. Recalculating, it chirped cheerfully, its artificial optimism grotesque in the thickening tension. Cassie Thorne frowned, the blue light of her phone illuminating the confusion spreading across her face. 22 years old, art student, daughter of the most feared man in 3 counties, though you wouldn't know it from looking at her. Small, dressed in a paint-stained denim jacket over a vintage band tee, she looked like any other college kid trying to get home after a late gallery showing. "Excuse me." Her voice was polite but firm. "You missed the exit. That was Main Street back there." The driver didn't speak, didn't even acknowledge her words. His eyes were fixed on the rearview mirror, staring right at her. Cold, predatory, dead. Cassie's stomach dropped. She'd seen eyes like that before, in the men her father had warned her about. The ones who thought a clubhouse full of bikers was just a bunch of criminals. The ones who didn't understand that some criminals protected their own with a savagery that would make hell itself recoil. She leaned forward, her hand instinctively reaching for the door handle. "Sir, you need to turn around. Stop the car. Now." Instead of hitting the brakes, his foot slammed onto the gas pedal. The sedan surged forward like a predator finally dropping its disguise, merging onto the dark, unlit highway that led away from the city lights, away from safety, away from everything familiar. Click. The sound was soft, barely audible over the engine's growl, but it echoed in Cassie's ears like a gunshot. The master lock engaged. All 4 doors. Every window. She was trapped. Her hand yanked the handle. Once. Twice. Nothing. The door wouldn't budge. She pounded the glass with her palm, the dull thud absorbed by the expensive soundproofing that now worked against her. "Sit back," the driver rasped, his voice sounding like gravel grinding on broken glass. He hadn't spoken until now, and Cassie almost wished he'd stayed silent. "You're not going home tonight, sweetheart." Cassie's heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to break free and run without her. But she didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't give him the satisfaction. Under the cover of her purse, positioned carefully on her lap, her thumb hovered over a contact labeled with a single word, Daddy. Silas Duke Thorne, president of the Grim Reaper's MC. A man whose reputation was written in scars, blood, and the ruins of everyone who'd ever crossed him. She pressed the button to share her live location, then typed 3 words with trembling but deliberate fingers. He locked it. The message showed delivered. Then, seconds that felt like hours later, read. The driver's hand shot out, snatching the phone from her grip before she could react. He glanced at the screen, smirked, and tossed it carelessly into the front passenger seat, just out of reach. "Nobody's coming for you," he said, accelerating further. The city lights were disappearing in the rearview mirror, replaced by the yawning darkness of industrial wasteland. "You think I'm stupid? I've been watching you for weeks. Art student. Lives alone in that shitty apartment on 7th. Always takes ride shares after dark because daddy's too busy playing Biker King to pick up his princess." Cassie's blood ran cold. He'd been watching her, planning this, but he'd made one critical mistake. He didn't know what happened when someone kicked the hornet's nest. He didn't know that the text she'd sent wasn't a plea for help. It was a death warrant. His death warrant. 8 miles away, inside the Grim Reaper's clubhouse, the party was in full swing. The converted warehouse on the industrial edge of town shook with the bass from speakers that had cost more than most people's cars. Leather-clad bikers filled the space, drinking, laughing, celebrating another successful run. The air was thick with cigarette smoke, whiskey fumes, and the kind of aggressive camaraderie that came from men who'd bled together. Duke Thorne sat at the head of the bar, a bottle of Jack Daniels in front of him, his massive frame relaxed but never truly at ease. 52 years old, built like a grizzly bear, covered in tattoos that told stories of violence and brotherhood. His beard was shot through with gray, his knuckles scarred from decades of fighting. The president's patch on his leather cut wasn't just decoration, it was a warning. His phone buzzed on the scarred wooden bar top. He almost ignored it, almost let it go to voicemail like he did most things when the club was gathered. But something, instinct honed by years of staying alive in a world that wanted him dead, made him pick it up. The message was from Cassie, his baby girl, his only daughter, the one pure thing in his blood-soaked life. 3 words and a location pin. He locked it. The music didn't stop. The laughter didn't die, but the room went absolutely silent as Duke slowly stood up from his stool. It wasn't a dramatic movement. Duke didn't do drama. He did inevitability. "Rook," he said quietly. His voice didn't rise, didn't crack, but it cut through the noise like a knife through silk. A younger man stepped forward immediately. 25, lean and dangerous, with sharp eyes and the kind of reflexes that had earned him the position of road captain despite his age. Jake Rook. Morrison had been in love with Cassie Thorne since she was 19, and he was fresh out of prospect status. He'd never said a word about it. Not to her. Not to anyone. You didn't chase the president's daughter unless you had a death wish. But the look on Duke's face made Rook's blood turn to ice water. "What happened?" Rook asked. Duke turned his phone around, showing the message and the moving location pin that was heading east on Route 47, away from the city, toward the abandoned shipyards and industrial graveyards where bad things happened to people who were never seen again. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. "Tank," Duke said, and a mountain of a man detached himself from the pool table. Arthur "Tank" Rodriguez, Sergeant-at-Arms, 47 years old, and built like a brick shithouse that had gone to war and won. Silent, brutal, efficient. Duke's voice was quiet, controlled, absolutely terrifying in its calmness. "Roll out. Now. All of you." Nobody asked questions. Nobody hesitated. 50 bikers dropped their drinks, abandoned their games, grabbed their weapons. Knives slid into boots. Chains were wrapped around fists. Guns, illegal, unregistered, and loaded for war, appeared from hidden holsters. The sound of 50 Harley-Davidson engines starting simultaneously was like thunder given physical form. Like dragons waking from a 1,000-year sleep. The ground shook. The windows rattled. Dogs 3 blocks away started howling. Duke swung his leg over his bike, a custom fat boy with more chrome than a luxury car showroom, and looked at his assembled club. Brothers who'd kill for him, die for him, burn the whole goddamn world for him. "My daughter is in a cage with a dead man," Duke said, his voice carrying over the rumbling engines. "We're going to collect both of them. No survivors. No witnesses. No mercy. Reapers." 50 voices roared in unison. The motorcycles exploded out of the parking lot like a mechanized cavalry charge, headlights cutting through the night, exhausts screaming defiance at the darkness. Rook pulled up alongside Duke, his own bike, a matte black street bob, keeping perfect pace. "Where is she?" Rook shouted over the wind. Duke held up his phone, the location pin moving in real time. Route 47, heading toward the shipyards. Rook's jaw clenched. The shipyards. Abandoned for 15 years, nothing but rusted metal and shadows. The kind of place where screams went unheard and bodies stayed buried. How long ago? Tank's voice crackled over the Bluetooth headsets they all wore. 3 minutes, Duke said. "She sent it 3 minutes ago." 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, a person could die a dozen different ways. But Cassie Thorne wasn't just a person. She was Duke's daughter. And Duke's daughter knew how to survive. She just had to hold on long enough for hell to arrive on 2 wheels. Cassie forced herself to breathe. Slowly. Deliberately. Panicking would get her killed. The driver was taking side roads now, avoiding traffic cameras, sticking to routes he'd clearly scouted beforehand. He was organized. Professional. This wasn't his first time. That thought should have terrified her. Instead, it focused her. Because predators always made the same mistake. They assumed fear meant helplessness. "Where are you taking me?" she asked, keeping her voice level. "Get him talking." Talking meant he wasn't doing other things. "Does it matter?" He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Nobody's going to find you. My father will." He laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "Your father? The biker? What's he going to do? Rev his motorcycle at me real loud?" Cassie smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret the other person was going to learn the hard way. Something like that. "Let me tell you something about men like your father," the driver said, apparently enjoying his own monologue. "They're all talk. Leather and loud pipes and tattoos. But when it comes down to it, they're just criminals. Thugs. And thugs don't scare me." While he talked, Cassie's hands were moving under her purse, unbuckling her seatbelt, slowly, quietly, making sure the click was covered by his voice, searching through her bag for anything that could be a weapon. Keys, too small, but she palmed them anyway, fitting them between her knuckles like her father had taught her. Hairspray, aerosol, highly flammable. Heavy perfume bottle, glass, weighted, could be used as a club. A pin, metal, sharp enough to puncture. Not much, but more than nothing. You've been watching me, Cassie said, keeping him engaged. How long? 3 weeks. He sounded proud. Learned your whole routine. You always leave the gallery around 10:30 on Thursdays. You always order the same rideshare company. You always sit on the right side. You're very predictable. And you made a fake driver profile. Stolen identity. Created the account 2 months ago, built up a good rating with legitimate rides. All it took was waiting for the algorithm to assign me to you. He met her eyes in the mirror again. Technology is amazing, isn't it? It really is, Cassie agreed. Because technology had also sent her father her exact GPS coordinates, updated every 30 seconds. The car turned off the main road onto a gravel path. Cassie's window showed nothing but darkness and the skeletal silhouettes of abandoned shipping containers. The shipyards. Her heartbeat accelerated despite her best efforts to stay calm. This was it. If she was going to fight, it had to be when he stopped the car. Once he dragged her out, once he got her on the ground in the dark. The sedan rolled to a stop beside a rusted freight container, its headlights illuminating a scene from a nightmare. Cracked concrete, puddles of oily water. No witnesses, no cameras, nothing. The driver killed the engine. Silence descended like a predator's claws. He turned around in his seat, really looking at her for the first time. His eyes traveled over her body in a way that made her skin crawl. Last chance, Cassie said quietly. Let me go? Drive away. Forget this happened. He smiled. Or what? Or you die tonight. He laughed again, that same wet, ugly sound. You're a tiny little thing. What are you going to do? Cassie's hand tightened around the hairspray. You'll find out. He opened his door, stepped out, walked around to her side. She watched his shadow approach through the tinted window, heard the electronic lock disengage. The door opened. He reached for her, and Cassie sprayed the entire can of hairspray directly into his eyes. The driver screamed, a high, piercing sound that shattered the night's silence, and stumbled backward, hands clutching at his face. The chemicals in the aerosol were designed to hold hair in place through wind and rain. In unprotected eyes, they burned like acid. Cassie didn't hesitate, didn't think, just moved. She kicked out with both feet, her boots connecting with his chest, sending him sprawling into the mud. She scrambled over the seats, trying to reach the driver's door, to escape into the night and run. But he was fast, faster than someone half-blind should be. His hand shot out and grabbed her ankle, yanking hard. Cassie slammed face first into the driver's seat, tasting blood where her lips split against the headrest. You bitch, he snarled, dragging her backward. I was going to make this quick, but now. Cassie twisted, bringing the heavy perfume bottle down on his wrist. Glass shattered. Blood sprayed. He howled and released her ankle. But now he was angry, and angry predators were the most dangerous kind. He lunged into the car, grabbing a fistful of her hair, using it like a leash to haul her out into the mud. Cassie screamed, not for help, because there was no one to hear, but in pure rage, and drove the keys between her knuckles into his throat. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to hurt. He choked, released her hair, and Cassie scrambled away on hands and knees, mud soaking through her jeans, her jacket torn, her phone somewhere in the car, unreachable. She made it 5 feet before he tackled her. They went down hard, Cassie's shoulder hitting a chunk of broken concrete. Pain exploded through her arm. He was on top of her now, heavier, stronger, his weight pinning her down, his hands reaching for her throat. Nobody's coming, he wheezed, blood from the key wound trickling down his neck. Nobody heard you. Nobody cares. You're just another. The ground began to vibrate. At first, Cassie thought it was her imagination. Adrenaline. Shock. But no. The vibration was real, growing stronger, rhythmic, powerful. Not an earthquake. Engines. The driver felt it too. His hands hesitated at her throat, his head turning toward the access road they'd driven in on. One headlight appeared in the darkness. Then 2. Then 10. Then 50. The shipyard, empty and silent seconds before, suddenly blazed with light as 50 Harley-Davidsons roared through the gate like mechanized fury given form. High beams cut through the night, illuminating the scene in harsh white light. A mud-covered girl on the ground, a man crouched over her, blood on his hands. The motorcycles spread out in a perfect tactical formation, surrounding the sedan, surrounding the driver, creating a wall of chrome and leather and barely restrained violence. The engines didn't shut off. They idled, a rumbling, snarling symphony that sounded like the heartbeat of some massive beast. Rook was the first off his bike. He didn't park it properly, didn't put down the kickstand, just laid the street bob on its side and sprinted across the mud, covering the distance between his position and Cassie in seconds. The driver scrambled off Cassie, backing away, his burned eyes wide with something that might have been fear if he'd been smart enough to fully comprehend what was happening. Rook didn't go for him. Not yet. First, he dropped to his knees beside Cassie, his hands, rough and scarred and gentle, checking her face, her arms, her ribs. "Cass," he breathed. "Are you hurt? Are you?" "I'm okay," Cassie gasped. "Rook, I'm okay." But she wasn't. Her hands were shaking. Her breath was coming in hitches. Adrenaline was crashing through her system like a tsunami, and the reality of what had almost happened was starting to hit. Rook pulled her against his chest, one hand cradling the back of her head, and for just a moment, just one heartbeat, Cassie let herself break, let herself shake, let herself be 22 and scared and grateful to be alive. "I've got you," Rook whispered into her hair. "I've got you, princess. You're safe now." Behind them, footsteps approached. Heavy, deliberate, inevitable. Duke Thorne walked through the parted crowd of bikers like Moses through the Red Sea. The riders stepped aside automatically, creating a path, their faces hard and cold and ready for blood. He looked at his daughter first, took in the mud, the split lip, the torn jacket. His jaw clenched so hard Cassie could hear his teeth grinding from 10 feet away. Then he looked at the driver. And the driver finally understood what it meant to make a mistake you couldn't survive. The driver tried to run. It was instinctive. Stupid. But when a man realizes he's not the predator anymore, that he's become the prey, rational thought disappears. He made it 3 steps before Tank appeared in front of him like a wall of muscle and malice. Tank didn't punch him. Didn't need to. Just stood there, immovable. And when the driver bounced off his chest, Tank's massive hand closed around the back of his neck like a vice. "Going somewhere." Tank's voice was a bass rumble that vibrated in the chest. I didn't," the driver stammered, his burned eyes streaming tears, blood still trickling from the puncture wound in his throat. "She's fine. Look, she's fine. No harm done, right? Just a misunderstanding." Duke walked past Cassie and Rook, his boots squelching in the mud. He stopped 3 feet from the driver, close enough to smell the man's fierce sweat, far enough to see his whole pathetic, squirming form. "Tank," Duke said quietly. "Throw him in the circle." Tank smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. He lifted the driver, one-handed, like he weighed nothing, and threw him into the center of the space the motorcycles had created. The man landed hard, rolling through mud and broken glass, scrambling to his feet only to find himself surrounded. 50 bikers formed a wall of leather and iron around him. No gaps, no escape. Some held chains, some held bats, some just held their fists, and those were somehow the most terrifying. The driver spun in a circle, looking for a weakness, finding none. "You can't do this," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I'll call the cops." With what phone?" Duke asked, pulling the man's cell from his own pocket. He'd retrieved it from the sedan while Rook was checking on Cassie. "This one." He dropped it in the mud, brought his boot down. The screen shattered with a satisfying crunch. "You want to try again?" Duke asked. "Want to tell me what you're going to do?" The driver's bravado crumbled. Please, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was." "Didn't know she was what?" Duke's voice was still quiet, still controlled, but underneath it was a current of rage so profound it made the air feel heavy. "Didn't know she was someone's daughter? Didn't know she was a person with people who love her? Or didn't know she was my daughter?" Let me explain something to you," Duke said, taking a step closer. "You're a predator. I understand predators. I respect them, even. Nature's full of them. But you..." He tilted his head, studying the man like an entomologist examining a particularly disgusting insect. "You're not a predator. You're a coward who preys on people you think can't fight back." "I'm sorry. No, you're not. Not yet. But you will be." Duke turned to the circle of bikers. "Anyone recognize this piece of shit?" A biker near the back raised his hand. Older guy, grizzled, with a scar that ran from temple to jaw. Police scanners been talking about a serial kidnapper. 5 women missing in 3 months. All took rideshares. All disappeared near industrial areas. The driver's face went white. That you? Duke asked. Silence. I asked you a question. They can't prove anything, the driver blurted. No bodies, no evidence, no. He cut himself off, realizing what he'd just admitted. Duke nodded slowly. No bodies. No evidence. He looked around at his assembled club. Brothers, we have ourselves a serial killer. A man who's been hunting women, terrorizing our city. And tonight, he smiled, and it was the coldest thing Cassie had ever seen. Tonight he made the mistake of touching my daughter. Duke, the driver whispered. Duke, please. You know my name. That's good. That means you've heard the stories. Which means you know exactly what's about to happen to you. Rook had helped Cassie to her feet and wrapped her in Duke's leather cut, the president's jacket, still warm from his body, smelling of motor oil and tobacco and safety. She was standing now, watching, and part of her knew she should look away. But she didn't, because this man had planned to hurt her, to kill her, to make her another nameless victim in a trunk somewhere. And her father, the man who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd scared away her prom date, who'd cried at her high school graduation, was about to deliver justice that the law never could. The car, Duke said. The bikers moved as one. 10 of them descended on the sedan. Bats came out. Crowbars. Chains. The sound of metal on metal rang through the shipyard as they systematically destroyed the vehicle. Windows shattered. Hood crumpled. Doors torn from hinges. They flipped it on its side, then on its roof, then kicked it until it was nothing but twisted metal and broken glass. The driver watched, crying now, as his carefully planned hunting ground was obliterated. Please, he sobbed. Please don't kill me. Duke walked up to him, close enough that the driver could see every scar, every line of violence etched into his face. Kill you, Duke said softly. Son, I'm not going to kill you. That would be mercy. He pulled on a pair of brass knuckles, the metal scarred and stained from decades of use. I'm going to break you. And then I'm going to let Tank break you. And then I'm going to let every single one of my brothers have a turn. And when you're begging, really begging, when you understand in your bones what it means to be helpless, then we're going to call the police. The cops will arrest you. No, Duke said. They won't. Because we're about to pop your trunk and find evidence of 5 murders. And the cops in this city know that sometimes justice comes on 2 wheels before it comes in a patrol car. He raised his fist. This is for my daughter. Author's note. The following scene contains implied violence, but does not graphically depict severe brutality. The beating was efficient and thorough. Duke's first punch broke the driver's nose. The second cracked ribs. By the 5th, the man was on the ground, curled in a fetal position, sobbing incoherently. Tank took his turn. Then Rook. Then 6 more brothers, each delivering their own measure of justice for crimes they knew went far beyond what had happened tonight. They didn't kill him. Duke had meant what he said. Death was mercy, and this man deserved none. When they were finished, the driver was conscious but broken. Not just physically. Something in his eyes had shattered. The predator was gone, replaced by a whimpering, defeated thing that would never hunt again. Tank, Duke said, wiping blood off his knuckles. Pop the trunk. Tank walked to the ruined sedan, ripped open what remained of the trunk, and went still. Boss, he called. You need to see this. Duke walked over, looked inside. His face didn't change, but Cassie saw his hands clench into fists so tight the knuckles went white. Rook, Duke said. Get my daughter out of here. What is it? Cassie asked. Nothing you need to see, princess. Rook gently turned her away, guiding her toward his motorcycle. But Cassie heard Tank's low whistle, heard one of the other bikers say, Jesus Christ. And she knew. The driver's trunk held evidence. Bodies or belongings or proof of the 5 women who'd disappeared. 5 women who would finally get justice tonight. Sirens began wailing in the distance. That's our cue, Duke said. He pulled out his phone, hit a number. Yeah, it's Duke. We're at the old shipyard off Route 47. Got your serial killer for you. Alive. Mostly. A pause. Yeah, evidence in the trunk. You'll want a forensics team. Another pause. No, we'll be gone before you arrive. You're welcome. He hung up. Mount up, Duke shouted. We're gone in 60 seconds. The bikers moved with practiced efficiency, engines roaring to life, forming up for the ride back to the clubhouse. They'd leave the driver for the cops, leave the evidence, leave the ruined car. But they'd take Cassie home. Rook helped her onto his bike, settling her behind him. "Hold on tight," he said. Cassie wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her cheek against his leather-clad back. She could feel his heartbeat, still racing from adrenaline. "Rook," she said softly. "Yeah. Thank you for coming." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Princess, I would burn the whole world down to get to you. Every single one of us would." The motorcycles began to move, pulling away from the shipyard in a tight formation. Duke led the pack, his Fat Boy's engine singing a song of victory. Behind them, the driver lay broken in the mud, waiting for the police who would find him and the evidence that would put him away forever. The sirens grew louder. The motorcycles grew quieter, disappearing into the night like avenging spirits returning to whatever hell had spawned them. The ride back to the clubhouse was different from the frantic race to save her. This time, the motorcycles moved in a protective formation with Cassie at the center. Duke in front, Rook carrying her, Tank guarding the rear. The other bikes formed a mobile wall, ensuring no one could get close, no one could threaten, no one could touch her. Cassie had ridden on motorcycles her whole life. It was impossible to be Duke Thorne's daughter and not love the rumble of a V-twin engine, but tonight felt different. She could feel the power beneath her, the controlled chaos of 50 bikes moving as one entity. She could feel Rook's breathing under her hands, steady and strong. Could feel the night air washing the fear away, replacing it with something that felt almost like peace. They didn't take the highway. Duke led them through the city on surface streets, a deliberate show of force, letting the world see them, letting anyone who might have similar ideas to the driver understand exactly what would happen if they tried. People on the sidewalk stopped and stared. Some looked frightened. Some looked awed. A few, mostly women, raised their fists in solidarity, recognizing the Grim Reaper's mission tonight for what it was, protection. The clubhouse appeared ahead, its warehouse walls painted with the club's logo, a skeletal figure in a hooded robe riding a motorcycle, scythe in hand. Home. The bikes pulled into the parking lot, forming perfect rows. Engines cut off one by one, the silence after so much noise almost deafening. Cassie climbed off Rook's bike on shaky legs. Adrenaline was finally crashing, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Her hands were trembling. Her lip was still bleeding where she'd split it against the seat. Duke was there immediately, his massive arms enfolding her in a hug that was both gentle and fierce. "You're okay," he said into her hair. Not a question, a statement, a command to the universe. "You're okay, baby girl." Cassie buried her face in her father's chest and finally, let herself cry. Not from fear, not from pain, from relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming knowledge that she was loved by an army of dangerous men who would go to war for her without hesitation. "I was so scared," she whispered. I know you were." Duke's voice was rough with emotion. "But you were brave. You fought. You survived. I'm so goddamn proud of you." Around them, the bikers were respectfully giving them space, but Cassie could feel their presence, their solidarity. In this world, she wasn't just Duke's daughter. She was the club's princess. And the club protected its own. "How did you get there so fast?" Cassie asked, pulling back to look at her father's face. Duke smiled. "We broke every traffic law in the book. Couple of cop cars tried to pull us over. We outran them. You're going to get arrested." "Nah, the cops know what happened. They're not going to push it." Duke's expression hardened. "And even if they try, we've got lawyers. And friends. And evidence that we saved your life." Rook approached, carrying a first aid kit. "Let me look at your lip, Cass." Cassie sat on a picnic table while Rook gently cleaned the cut with antiseptic. His hands were steady, professional, but she could see the lingering fear in his eyes, the what-if scenarios he was playing out in his head. "I'm okay," she said softly. "You are now." Rook's jaw clenched. "When I saw that text, when I saw you on the ground with that piece of shit on top of you." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Cassie reached up and took his hand. "But you got there. You all got there." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. Just the two of them, hands touching, something unspoken but profound passing between them. Tank cleared his throat loudly. "Need you inside, Rook. Duke wants a debrief." The moment broke. Rook squeezed her hand once, then let go. Get some rest, princess. Rook, Cassie called as he walked away. He turned. I knew you'd come, she said. His smile was small but genuine. Always. Cassie woke up in her old bedroom in the apartment above the clubhouse. She hadn't lived here in 4 years, not since she'd moved out for college. But Duke had kept her room exactly as she'd left it. Band posters on the walls, fairy lights around the mirror, a bookshelf full of art history texts and novels she'd loved as a teenager. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, warm and gentle. Outside, she could hear the sounds of the clubhouse waking up, motorcycles being maintained, low voices, the clink of tools on metal. Her phone was on the nightstand, miraculously intact despite everything. 13 missed calls from friends, 27 texts, 6 voicemails, and 1 news notification. Serial kidnapper arrested after anonymous tip. Cassie clicked on the article. Police have arrested 43-year-old Marcus Webb in connection with the disappearances of 5 women over the past 3 months. Webb was found badly beaten at an abandoned shipyard, where evidence linking him to all 5 murders was discovered in his vehicle. Police say Webb was apprehended following an anonymous tip from concerned citizens. Authorities are not seeking any other suspects in connection with Webb's assault, citing the overwhelming evidence of his crimes and the likelihood that his victims' families or associates may have taken justice into their own hands. Webb is currently in critical but stable condition at County General Hospital under police guard. He faces multiple counts of kidnapping, murder, and assault. Cassie set the phone down. Justice. The official kind would come eventually. Trials, sentencing, prison. But last night, a different kind of justice had been served. The kind that came from family, from loyalty, from 50 bikers who loved a girl and would burn the world for her. A knock on the door. Come in, Cassie called. Duke entered, carrying a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. Made you breakfast. You cooked. Cassie raised an eyebrow. Duke's culinary skills began and ended with scrambled eggs. Tank cooked. I carried it up the stairs. Duke set the plate on her desk. How are you feeling? Sore? Tired? Alive? Duke sat on the edge of her bed, the frame creaking under his weight. For a moment, he just looked at her. Really looked, like he was memorizing every detail, confirming to himself that she was real and whole and safe. I should have been there, he said quietly. Dad, I should have been the one driving you home. Should have insisted. Should have. You taught me to fight, Cassie interrupted. You taught me to stay calm. You taught me to always have an exit strategy. And when I needed you, you came with an entire army. She reached out and took his scarred, tattooed hand. You were there, Dad. Maybe not in the car, but when it mattered, you were there. Duke's eyes were suspiciously bright. You're too good for this world, baby girl. Too good for a father like me. I don't want any other father, Cassie said firmly. You're exactly who I need. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Duke cleared his throat. Rook asked if he could take you to breakfast. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere safe. He paused. I told him yes. Cassie's heart did a little flip. Yeah. That boy's been in love with you for 3 years and never said a word out of respect for me. After last night, Duke shook his head. Life's too short. And if you're going to date someone, might as well be someone I know would die before he let anything happen to you. Are you giving me permission to date Rook? Cassie asked, unable to keep the smile off her face despite everything. I'm giving you permission to make your own choices, Duke corrected, and acknowledging that Rook's a good man. One of the best I've got. He stood up. But if he hurts you, I'll break all his fingers. Dad, what? I'm allowed to have standards. Rook picked Cassie up at 11 in his truck, a beat-up Ford that was somehow more reliable than vehicles twice its age. They drove to a diner on the edge of town, the kind of place that served coffee in chipped mugs and had a jukebox that only played songs from the 70s. Neutral territory. Safe. They sat in a booth by the window, and for the first few minutes, neither of them spoke. Just drank coffee and watched the traffic pass. Finally, Rook broke the silence. I need to tell you something, he said, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. Cassie set down her mug. Okay. Rook took a breath. I've been in love with you since the first time Duke brought you to the clubhouse, and you called me out for cheating at poker. You were 19. I was 22. And I knew that you were it for me. But you were the president's daughter, and I was just a prospect, and the rules were clear. So I kept my distance. Became your friend. Watched you date other guys and told myself it was enough just to be in your life. He looked at her, his eyes intense. Last night, when I saw that text, when I saw you on the ground. Cassie, I have never been more terrified in my entire life. And I realized that if something happened to you before I told you how I felt, I would never forgive myself. Cassie's heart was pounding. Rook, I'm not asking you to feel the same way, he continued quickly. I'm not trying to take advantage of what happened. I need you to know. You're the strongest, bravest, most incredible person I've ever met. And if you want to just stay friends, that's okay. But if there's any chance, any at all, that you might feel the same way. Cassie reached across the table and took his hand. I crashed my bike 3 months ago, she said softly. Rook frowned, confused by the apparent non sequitur. What? My bicycle. I was riding to class, hit a pothole, went over the handlebars. Scraped up my hands pretty badly. You remember? Yeah. You called me to pick you up. I didn't call my dad. I didn't call my roommate. I didn't call my friends from school. Cassie smiled. I called you. Because you're the person I want when things go wrong. You're the person I think about when I'm happy and want to share it. You're the person She paused, gathering courage. You're the person I've been in love with for 2 years and was too scared to say anything about because I didn't want to ruin our friendship or cause problems with the club. Rook stared at her. You? What? I love you, Jake Morrison, Cassie said, using his real name, the one almost nobody used. I have for a long time. And last night, when I was in that car, you know what I thought? I thought, I'm going to die without telling Rook how I feel. Rook's expression transformed, shocked to joy to something so tender it made Cassie's chest ache. Can I kiss you? He asked. God, please do. He leaned across the table, cupped her face in his hands, gentle, reverent, like she was something precious, and kissed her. It wasn't their first kiss. It wasn't even particularly romantic, sitting in a diner booth with the smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee in the air. But it was perfect. When they pulled apart, Rook was grinning like an idiot. Your dad is going to kill me. My dad gave us his blessing. What? He told me this morning. Said you were a good man. One of the best he's got. Cassie smirked. Though he did threaten to break all your fingers if you hurt me. That's fair. Rook's thumb traced her cheekbone, careful to avoid the bruise forming there. I would never. I know. They ordered breakfast, eggs and hash browns and toast, and talked for 2 hours. About everything and nothing. About last night and the future. About fears and dreams and the strange, violent, loving world they both inhabited. Outside, the sun climbed higher in the sky, washing the city in golden light. 3 weeks later, Cassie stood in an art gallery downtown, her latest paintings on display. The series was called Angels and Demons, abstract pieces depicting motorcycles as guardian angels, chrome wings spreading across canvases, protecting smaller figures rendered in softer colors. The inspiration was obvious to anyone who knew her story. The rest of the art world just saw powerful, emotional work that spoke to themes of protection and family. The gallery was packed. Art students and collectors, critics and curious onlookers. And, filling the back of the room, 20 members of the Grim Reaper's MC. They looked wildly out of place. Leather and tattoos and barely concealed weapons in a space full of wine glasses and tasteful lighting. But they'd come because Duke had told them to, because Cassie was their princess, and you supported your princess. Rook stood beside Cassie, his hand resting on the small of her back. They'd been officially together for 3 weeks now, and the club had taken it surprisingly well. Mostly because everyone had known for years that Rook loved her, and the betting pool on when they'd finally get together had made Tank $300. This is weird, Rook muttered, looking at a painting of a motorcycle rendered in shades of gold and crimson. Is that supposed to be my bike? Maybe. Cassie smiled. Duke approached, uncomfortable in a button-down shirt he'd worn to look respectable. It wasn't working. He still looked like exactly what he was. But the effort was sweet. These are good, baby girl, he said, studying a canvas that depicted a small figure sheltered beneath massive, wing-like chrome shapes. Thank you, Dad. You making money off these? A few have sold already. Good. You're talented. Don't let anyone tell you different. He kissed the top of her head. I'm proud of you. An art critic approached, a thin woman in designer glasses who'd been eyeing the bikers with obvious nervousness. Miss Thorne, she said, Your work is quite powerful. The themes of protection and salvation coming from unexpected sources. Is it biographical? Cassie looked at her father, at Rook, at Tank and the other brothers standing awkwardly but loyally in the back of the room. Yes, she said simply. It's about family, and about the people who love you enough to ride through hell to save you. The critic nodded, clearly not understanding, but sensing she shouldn't press further. When she left, Duke chuckled. Ride through hell. That's one way to put it. What would you call it? Cassie asked. Duke considered. Tuesday. Rook laughed. Tank, overhearing, raised his beer in agreement. The evening wound down. Collectors made offers. Critics took notes. The Grim Reapers stood guard, a wall of leather and loyalty that ensured no one made Cassie uncomfortable. No one got too close. No one threatened their princess in even the smallest way. As the gallery closed and people filtered out, Cassie stood in front of her largest painting, a massive canvas depicting 50 motorcycles arranged in a protective circle around a single small figure. She'd titled it The Rescue. Rook wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on top of her head. You okay? I'm perfect, Cassie said. And she was. She'd survived something that had destroyed other women. She'd fought back. She'd been saved by an army of bikers who loved her unconditionally. She'd found love with a man who would die before he let anything hurt her. She'd turned trauma into art, fear into beauty, pain into something that spoke to others who'd been through similar darkness. Outside, the motorcycles were starting up one by one, preparing for the ride back to the clubhouse. The familiar rumble of engines, a sound that used to terrify some people, but now only made Cassie feel safe. Ready to go home? Rook asked. Cassie took one last look at her paintings, her story told in color and light and shadow. Yeah, she said. Let's go home. They walked out of the gallery together, hand in hand, into the warm evening air. The Grim Reapers were waiting, bikes idling, ready to escort their princess wherever she wanted to go. Duke was in the lead, his fat boy gleaming under the streetlights. Tank was at the rear, massive and silent and watchful. And 50 brothers, family, not by blood but by choice, formed a protective convoy around Cassie and Rook as they mounted Rook Street Bob. As they pulled away from the gallery, Cassie looked up at the sky. Stars were starting to appear, bright pinpoints in the deepening twilight. The city was dangerous. The world was full of predators. Bad things happened to good people every single day. But Cassie Thorne rode through it all on the back of a motorcycle, surrounded by wolves who had chosen her as their own, protected by an army that would burn the world for her. And she knew in her bones, in her soul, that she would never ride alone again. The motorcycles roared into the night, exhausts singing songs of family and fury and unconditional love. And somewhere behind them, in a prison cell, Marcus Webb heard those distant engines and remembered what it felt like to be hunted by something far more dangerous than himself. Justice had come on two wheels, and it had been beautiful,